Hook in for 80 BC, roughly 7,000 Greek soldiers held back an invading Persian army estimated at over 100,000 troops for 3 full days. Among those defenders, 300 were Spartans. Every single one of them died. And that sacrifice, made in a narrow mountain pass on the coast of Greece, changed the course of Western civilization forever. In the next 10 minutes, you will understand exactly how this battle unfolded, what made the Spartan stand at Thermopylae so strategically significant, and why historians still debate whether it was an act of heroic sacrifice or a calculated military decision with a very specific political purpose. The most surprising part is not how they fought. It is why Leonidas almost certainly knew from the very beginning that none of them were coming home, and chose to stay anyway. Background: to understand the Battle of Thermopylae, you first need to understand the world it was fought in. By 480 BC, the Persian Empire under King Xerxes I was the largest empire on earth. It stretched from modern-day Egypt and Turkey all the way east into parts of Central Asia. Xerxes had inherited this empire from his father Darius I, who had already launched one failed invasion of Greece a decade earlier. That invasion ended in Persian defeat at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC, a humiliation that Xerxes was determined to erase. Greece at this time was not a unified nation. It was a collection of independent city-states, often at war with one another. Sparta and Athens were rivals. Corinth had its own interests. Thebes, located in central Greece, was actually willing to cooperate with Persia. The idea of a unified Greek resistance was fragile, politically complicated, and far from guaranteed. Xerxes spent years preparing for his second invasion. He assembled one of the largest military forces the ancient world had ever seen. Ancient sources like Herodotus put the Persian army at over 2 million soldiers, a figure modern historians largely reject as exaggerated. Contemporary estimates place the invading force at somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000 troops, supported by a massive naval fleet. Even at the most conservative estimate, the Persians vastly outnumbered any force the Greeks could field. The Greek city-states, recognizing the threat, formed a defensive alliance. They chose to make their stand at Thermopylae, a narrow coastal pass in central Greece. The name Thermopylae literally means hot gates, a reference to the sulfuric hot springs in the area. The pass was in some sections no wider than 15 meters. This geography was not accidental. It was the entire point. Main content: the Greek force that assembled at Thermopylae in late August of 480 BC numbered approximately 7,000 men. This included soldiers from Sparta, Thebes, Thespiae, Corinth, and several other city-states. The Spartan contingent was 300 warriors, each personally selected by King Leonidas I, who commanded the entire allied force. Notably, Leonidas chose only Spartans who already had living sons, suggesting he understood the mission would end in death. The Spartan warriors were among the most disciplined soldiers in the ancient world. Spartan males entered military training, known as the agoge, at the age of 7. By the time they reached adulthood, they had undergone over a decade of brutal conditioning, combat training, and psychological hardening. Their fighting system centered on the hoplite phalanx, a formation of overlapping shields and synchronized spear thrusts that was extraordinarily effective in confined spaces. Thermopylae was chosen specifically because it neutralized the Persian numerical advantage. In a pass 15 meters wide, it did not matter if you had 300 warriors or 300,000. Only a limited number could engage at any given time. The Greeks used a defensive wall already present at the site, known as the Phocian Wall, reinforcing it and using it as an anchor point for their formation. For the first 2 days of battle, the Greek phalanx was devastatingly effective. Persian infantry waves, including elite units called the Immortals, were repelled repeatedly with heavy losses. Herodotus records that Xerxes watched from a throne set up on a nearby hill and reportedly rose to his feet 3 times in alarm as he watched his forces driven back. The Greek defenders rotated their troops in shifts, with the Spartans holding the most critical positions. But here is what nobody talks about. The Persian strategy was not only military. Xerxes also sent emissaries offering Leonidas terms. He reportedly offered the Spartans the chance to surrender their weapons, after which they would be allowed to leave and would receive rich lands elsewhere in the empire. Leonidas famously replied, in the Spartan tradition of extreme brevity, with 2 words in Greek, vmolon lebe. Come and take them. This phrase is still used in military and political contexts today. The Greek position at Thermopylae began to unravel on the evening of the second day, and it happened not through military defeat but through betrayal. A local Greek man named Ephialtes approached Xerxes and offered to reveal a mountain path called the Thermopylae Trail, which ran behind the Greek position and allowed the Persians to outflank the defenders entirely. Leonidas had stationed a force of approximately 1,000 Phocian soldiers on this path specifically to guard against this possibility. When the Persian column, again led by the Immortals, moved through the Thermopylae Trail overnight, the Phocians were surprised and withdrew to higher ground rather than holding their position. By dawn on the third day, Leonidas knew his position was compromised. At this point, Leonidas made the decision that has defined his legacy for 2,500 years. He dismissed the majority of the allied Greek forces, ordering them to retreat. Approximately 4,000 Greek soldiers withdrew. But Leonidas and his 300 Spartans stayed. They were joined by around 700 Thespians, who chose to remain voluntarily because their city lay directly in the Persian advance route, and approximately 400 Thebans, whose exact motivations historians still debate, with some suggesting they were held by force. The third day of fighting was a deliberate last stand. Leonidas moved his forces forward out of the pass to meet the Persians on slightly more open ground. Herodotus records that at some point Leonidas himself was killed, and that the Greeks fought over his body in intense close combat before eventually being forced back. The Persian strategy at this point shifted. Xerxes reportedly ordered archers to shower the remaining defenders with arrows rather than risk further infantry casualties. The remaining Greeks, surrounded on all sides and attacked from front and rear, were killed to the last man. Deep dive. The strategic outcome of Thermopylae requires careful interpretation. Persia won the battle. That is a plain historical fact. Following Thermopylae, Xerxes advanced into central Greece, captured Athens, and burned the Acropolis. On the surface, the sacrifice appeared to accomplish nothing. But the delay had consequences that rippled outward. Those 3 days gave the Greek fleet critical time to reposition and prepare for what came next. Shortly after Thermopylae, the Greek naval forces, led by the Athenian commander Themistocles, defeated the Persian fleet decisively at the Battle of Salamis in September 80 BC. Without a reliable navy to supply and support his massive land army, Xerxes was in a strategically weakened position. He withdrew with a large portion of his forces. The following year, in 479 BC, the remaining Persian army in Greece was destroyed at the Battle of Plataea. The invasion was over. Greece remained independent. The Persian Empire never again attempted a full-scale invasion of the Greek mainland. Analysis. Thermopylae occupies a unique place in military history because its significance is almost entirely disproportionate to its immediate outcome. 3 days at a mountain pass. A tactical defeat. And yet the battle became a foundational event in the identity of Greek culture, demonstrating that Persian expansion could be resisted, that discipline and terrain could compensate for numerical inferiority, and that sacrifice for a collective cause carried political meaning. The modern legacy of Thermopylae extends into military doctrine, philosophy, and culture. The phrase Molen Lab appears on military insignia around the world today. The principle of using terrain to offset numerical disadvantage remains a core concept in military strategy. And the psychological impact of the stand, communicated throughout Greece in the days after the battle, helped consolidate resistance against Persia in a way that pure battlefield victories rarely achieve. It is also worth acknowledging what Thermopylae was not. It was not a spontaneous act of suicidal heroism. Before you go, if you learned something valuable today, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to War History for a brand new video every single day. We will see you in the next one.